So we get involved whenever there's a consumer that can be an individual or a business that's been scammed, and it's limited only by your imagination. The typical charges that we file are aggregate theft. To aggregate meaning to combine multiple thefts into one offense to increase the jurisdictional amount, thereby the punishment range. So we get involved in investment scams, construction fraud, car cases. Someone sells you a car and they don't actually have the title, or they don't disclose that they went to the title loan place yesterday. We handle cases that involve pyramid schemes, Ponzi schemes. Anytime when a consumer has been defrauded of their money based on the promise of work to be done or a service to have been performed.
Very good. Can you tell me, in regards to this, well, I'll put it this way. What would you say is the most common type of crime these contractors commit after a storm like this?
The most common crime that we see is contractors that come in, they get a significant amount of money up front, they do a little bit of work, and then they walk the job. They do this multiple times to many victims. This is not a one-off situation where there's just one victim in this particular situation. So these contractors will come in, get a decent amount of money based on the whatever verbal contract that they may have. They do a little bit of work, and then they walk with the rest of your funds.
Very good. So Valerie, with all of your knowledge, what would you say? What would you, well, I'll put it this way. If a building contractor or a plumber were to come to your door, you had storm damage, what kinds of questions would you ask them to try to figure out if they are legit or not legit?
Sure. The first thing I'm going to tell myself is to do my homework. I want to find out more about that contractor. First of all, I would be suspicious of any contractor that came knocking on my door. If you have someone that says, oh, I've been working in the neighborhood, I have extra materials, it would cut down on the cost for your job, I can see XYZ about your roof, I'm going to be very suspicious from the beginning. I might ask them for something in writing. You always want to get a written estimate. I suggest to folks that they get multiple estimates. Always automatically go with the lowest bid, because if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. If it seems like you can't do that job for that amount of money, then they probably can't. And they're going to come back to you later and say things have changed, prices have gone up because of the winter storm. This is going to cost you more than we thought. So you want to be very careful about who you're dealing with. You want to ask for references. And it's important that you talk to their prior customers whose jobs are completed. So not a job that's ongoing, a completed job, and multiple folks. You need to actually call these people and say, what was the quality of work? Did you have trouble getting them to finish the job? Did the price ever change? Anything like that, anything unexpected happen during your transaction with this contractor? Most of the time, if they're willing to give you references of completed jobs, you're going to talk to those folks and things will be fine. But don't just assume that because they gave you names that everything's fine.
I got you. That's really good advice. Is there any one website that you would go to first to check out either a building contractor or a plumber? Or would you simply just do an internet search with their name? What would if there was one step or one internet type of thing you were going to do to background these people, what would it be?
If I could do one internet search, I would go to the Better Business Bureau website and I would type in the contractor's name or phone number to find out if they have any complaints. Additionally, do a general internet search on the company and the person that you're dealing with, and you'll find out pretty quickly whether there are other people out there who've had bad experiences.
Tell me the kinds of things that would pop up in a search like that. That's a great piece of advice. What kinds of things can you get from just punching a guy's name in who comes to your door, for example, claims to be a good contractor? What kinds of things could you find out about him on the internet?
You might find links to web pages about that person, Facebook pages I've seen, victims put together against a contractor. I've seen links to Ripoff Report, which is another website for consumers. You might pull something up regarding the Better Business Bureau complaints that have been received. Anything in which someone has put a negative experience out on the website or on the internet can be good information for you to know ahead of time. Now, just because somebody's had one complaint doesn't mean you don't necessarily want to work with them. But if you see multiple folks complaining about the same contractor, you want to be very, very careful.
Very good. That's great. Really, really good information, Valerie. And you put it very simply, which is, I appreciate that. That's what we want to give people. Let me think here for a second.
In terms of down payments, that's a good thing to talk about.
Yeah, let's talk about that. As far as paying these people, how would you recommend you set up the payment schedule with one of these contractors?
So many times a contractor is going to want a significant amount of money up front. And they might tell you that that's required because they have to pay for materials ahead of time. But any contractor worth their salt is going to be able to afford to purchase materials for your job. If they don't have the money for materials, you could suggest, what if I were to pay for the materials directly? Would that help you? And really, they can't wiggle out of that one unless they want to say they're going to get some kind of discount for a contractor. So red flags to me with contractors always include asking you to make the check out to them as an individual as opposed to their business. Sometimes if they can't produce insurance for the job, that's a red flag. That's not someone that you want to work with. If they insist on having a significant amount of money in order to start the job, just move on, work with someone else that has been in business long enough to have built up enough of a cushion that they can go and purchase materials for your job to begin with. You always want to stagger your payments and make them in accordance with the progress of the job.
For our viewers out there that do run into a rip-off situation, the contractor has taken their money and not done much work and just left the job, or the same thing with plumbers. Somebody does that to somebody. What should they do? How can they try to get this person prosecuted?
So the name of the game in construction fraud cases is multiple victims. When we have a situation where we have multiple victims in the same situation where they've paid a significant amount of money, received very little work, and the contractors walk the job, that's a case we can prosecute as an aggregate theft. And the underlying offense really is construction fraud. But basically, we look for cases where there's multiple victims, or the defendant makes admissions, I spent your money on a different job, or we look at the bank records and we see that instead of going to Home Depot, he went to Vegas. So those are the ways that we are able to transform what would necessarily be a civil case into a criminal case. So I've talked to consumers over the years that sometimes get very frustrated when they're the only victim that we're aware of. And I have to tell them this is a civil matter because the law says that non-performance of a contract by itself is not evidence of criminal intent. Well, what does that mean? That means that if the only thing we have is that the guy didn't perform his end of the bargain, we don't have a criminal case. We don't have criminal intent. The way we show criminal intent and the way the jury can infer criminal intent is when there are multiple complainants to the same contractor.
Is there a number that you could give us as far as how many people need to have been ripped off?
There's not really a number. It can start at 2. It can be 10. It can be more than that. You know, we've had many construction fraud cases where there's 30 or more victims. But we just need more than one generally, unless you have other evidence of criminal intent.
Very good. And that's great.
You know, people should always get written estimates and use a written contract. You know, you don't ever want to do a handshake deal with a contractor. The estimate should include a scope of work that is details of the project that describes what's going to be done. not down to the number of nails that will be used, but down to specific enough that you can use it as a go by.
Very good. That brings up my last question. Um, 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 we always tell people they need to sign a contract before they hire any of these people. What should be included in that contract, as simply as you can put it?
The contract should include the responsibilities for the contractor. So, in other words, it's his responsibility to obtain permits. It's his responsibility to keep insurance policy that's current. It's his responsibility to see that the work is done in good workmanship. That the work is done in a good manner. That it's very clear that what the responsibilities for the consumer are. So some of those responsibilities is payment on time, payment as the work progresses, maybe making sure that the project area is open and available for the contractor to work on whenever necessary. Those just make sure everybody's responsibilities are outlined.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good.
Obviously, you want to have the cost of the project and a good description of what's going to be done.
Okay, I'll make it a little more, just to make it a shorter answer. I'm going to ask you one more, a little more specific, that same question. If I'm going to sign a contract with either a contractor or a plumber, what should that contract spell out as far as the contractor or plumber's work?
Whenever you're dealing with a written contract, you want to spell out the responsibilities of both parties. So in this case, the contractor, what he's responsible for, and in your case, what a homeowner is responsible for. So as long as you detail those things, as well as describing the project and giving a sales price, then you've got a good contract.